I
Really?
think the first few months of this year has actually been pretty decent. There was the first film this year that made me change the way I sort of like rate films, the most dramatic way I rate films. That's that film's come out. There's been a film that is sort of like on the opposite scale, which sort of like has slightly changed the way I rate films. And so we've had the high of a 5, and now we've got the low of a 0. I've actually hit a film with a 0.
Wow.
So there's that. And I just think it's been horror-wise. There's been some really good films, like Late Night with the Devil, which I've still yet to see. But the good thing is, it's on Shudder as of Friday.
Nice.
So I can't wait for that. And you've had that Immaculate, and then you've got a few horror films coming up, and there's been a few decent animated films and a few nice dramas, a few decent action films. So I think it's been pretty decent for the first couple of months.
I think I probably just hit one of those time periods when it's like, do you know what? I've seen too many films. I need to just like read a book or something. And that happens to me sometimes. And then it's like, right, back into movies again. And I'm off. I just need a bit of a breather sometimes.
You'll end up doing what I do in October and do a 30 movies in 30 days kind of thing. And then realize what films, when you have a little look at the first 6 months, you go, I can't believe I missed this one. And actually, this one's good and that one's good. So that's what you'll end up probably doing.
I do want to watch the First Omen because I do like the original Omen. I'm not expecting it to be as good as that because I do love that movie, but that looks interesting. So I want to watch that one.
I've seen that, but I'll get onto my thoughts on that in a little bit.
I have finally seen My Life as a Courgette.
Brilliant, which you'll get onto that in a couple of seconds as well.
I will get onto that. I've rewatched the original Cape Fear from 1961. Yeah. I've introduced Annette to the original Footloose. I watched the Ivan Reitman Legal Eagles yesterday, so I'm going through my physical media collection going, I've not seen that for a while, and popping it in the player and sitting watching it. So I've watched a few bits and pieces. I haven't touched any video games. There's no games that interest me at the minute, so I've just kind of hit this real funk.
I'm sort of agreeing with you on that one there. All the slightly bigger ones like the Dragon's Dogma 2 and what have you, it's just, they're not interesting me at all. I've tried that one, which was on PlayStation Plus, that Immortals of Avium, which is okay. It's fine. It's passing the time. It's sort of like a plodding kind of game. And then my guess is as soon as I finish that, I'm just going to go into the doldrums of, I've got nothing to play now. This is the months of now, from the back end-ish of April leading all the way, I would say, up to August, is normally sort of like the doldrums of video games. It's where nothing much gets released in those few months. You've got E3 no longer exists anymore. So you've got Summer Games Fest that's taken over that. It's just all about news and things like that, what to expect for later on in the year. So if you hit the speed bumps now, very unlikely you're going to get out of those speed bumps until at least August, September.
Yeah. All I've been playing this year is Lego Dimensions from like 2015 or whatever the hell that came out. And I managed to platinum it. I've only ever platinumed 4 games. Every single one that I've platinumed has been a Lego game.
Yeah.
So the hardest trophy on that is I had to do a portal level in 25 minutes. And the first time I did it, it took me about 1 hour and 20. So I had to shave like an hour off that. And I eventually did it just by learning the shortcuts and just playing the same level over and over and over again, and I ended up doing it. So, but now I've platinumed it. I've not finished the game, but I've got all the trophies. I'm like, meh, I don't care now. There's nothing. There's no little trophy that can put a smile on my face and feed my endorphins. So I'm not quite sure what I'm going to go into next. Same with VR. I haven't put the VR headset on for weeks.
I think Sony's abandoned it, if I'm being honest, the PlayStation VR 2.
And it's a shame because it's such good technology, but it's just like, give us some titles. Give me some Shark Tank experiences or something fun to do.
It's typical Sony, though, because they have a habit of doing that. They release something that has potential. Look at the PlayStation Vita. Yeah. The Vita, as a handheld, was miles ahead of what Nintendo could do. It was an OLED panel that was on it. I had a Vita. It was crisp. It was lovely to look at. Decent sound on it. It was nice to hold in the hand. The controls were actually really nice because the little sticks, they were really well designed. And so it was a lovely piece of kit, but they just buried it. They've done the same with the PlayStation VR, the first one. They've done the same with the VR 2. They've done the same with that PlayStation Portal, which is a £200 blank slate of a thing that sort of runs on pseudo Android, but you can't do anything with it. You can't store games on it because there's very little memory on board. You can only stream to it, whereas you can stream PlayStation 5 games to your phone or to a tablet.
Yeah.
So that's pointless. And just Sony ends up trying to do this, tries to sort of like do things that other companies are doing, but other companies understand how to do them. And Sony just goes, oh, let's do it, and then just ignores them. So they should just stop doing that, because there is rumors that Sony is thinking about doing another handheld.
I've heard that, yeah.
Stop doing that. Concentrate on your console ones. That's you and Microsoft's area. Use two go up against each other in that kind of thing. Leave handhelds to see the Steam Deck or the Asus ROG or what Nintendo does, because Nintendo doesn't have to challenge the Steam Deck or the ROG. They have their own little pocket areas there. So just leave those alone. Concentrate on what you're good at, and that's console gaming.
Yep. So, yeah, my poor old console is downstairs just gathering dust. I do clean it once a week, give it a wipe over just to make sure it's okay. But other than that, I've just, I've been watching TV shows. I'm just about to finish The Newsroom season 1 from like 10 years ago. That's pretty good. Yeah, I'm just like me. I need to get out. I think I need to get out and see the sun, and it feels like it's just been a long winter where it's just like constantly living indoors.
Like a bear just hibernating, and then you just pop your head out going, is it time to come out? Nah, not yet. I'll go back. I'll just regress just slightly back, yeah.
Yep. So what have you been watching?
We can start with the First Omen. Actually, it's when films have this tendency of releasing two of the same kind of films together. Yeah. So you had like Deep Impact and Armageddon, Volcano and Dante's Peak, those kind of things. Well, we had Immaculate a few weeks ago, the Sydney Sweeney film about a nun that is possession and the devil, etc. And then the First Omen, which is about a nun, possession and the devil, etc. So two of exactly the same kind of films. So on my little list that I've wrote down, I've sort of like grouped them both together because they are pretty much the same thing. Immaculate, Sydney Sweeney, she goes off to this convent in the middle of Italy in the hills, and bad things start to happen. And in the First Omen, it's a prequel to the Omen, and it is just about a nun coming from America to a convent to where there's a lot of abandoned children, etc. She strikes up a relationship with one of the children who's sort of like pushed to the background because people see her as being weird and very strange, and then starts to uncover a very nasty truth. You know how the Omen starts. It doesn't sort of like, the annoying thing is with the First Omen, it does something in the First Omen which does not make any sense whatsoever. Considering it's a prequel, you would expect it to lead into the Omen, but it does something which makes absolutely zero sense, which makes you think, has the director actually seen the Omen?
Are you able to say what that thing is, or would that be like a huge spoiler?
Spoiler. It's a spoiler for the film.
That was going to be my question. How much does it tie into the First Omen? The Richard Donner one. Does it tie in nicely to it?
It does for the most part, but then it does that little thing that some prequels have a bad habit of doing, especially if the prequel has been released a good few decades after the original film, that it does follow sort of like, you think, oh, actually, I know where this is going. It's going to set it up for the first film to actually take over the baton. But then it does something that does not make sense. So when you see it, you will instantly spot it because there's something that's mentioned in the Omen that should be set up in the First Omen, but it isn't. And so you go, okay, that doesn't make sense considering I know how this thing happens. But for the most part, though, it's not too bad. It's shot really nicely. It's got a good direction to it. It's a directorial debut. So it's got a good direction to it. The director sort of like gets horror. It does the usual quiet bang a few times.
Yeah.
But yeah, overall, it's not too bad. I wish it would have felt like its own film leading up to the Omen, rather than sort of like going, well, we have to actually build up to the Omen. Do something a little bit different rather than just doing the things that we've seen before. Because Immaculate, like I said, came out a few weeks prior to it, and it has the same setup. And you can think, oh, well, the First Omen copied Immaculate and vice versa. Maybe Immaculate was an idea that was floating around in Sydney Sweeney's head for 10 years. She originally wanted to set in Ireland, in a convent in Ireland, but then because the film didn't get a distributor and nobody was interested, over the years when she was trying to get somebody to actually latch onto the movie, she just went, we need to change things. We need to evolve it. So that's how that film came to be. But I think out of the two, Immaculate is the slightly better one because you don't have a first one to fall on.
Yeah.
So Immaculate is able to actually be its own film. So it's the better out of the two. But if you're looking for a double bill of possession films, then they're actually a pretty decent double bill.
Okay. I was going to ask that. Do they work if you did watch them back to back, or are they that so similar that you'd be like, I've kind of just watched this film an hour and a half ago?
You will get deja vu.
Yeah.
But there are scenes in Immaculate that the First Omen doesn't do. So it will feel different enough. But it's like if you did sit down and watch Volcano and Dante's Peak, they sort of like have those exact themes running alongside each other, but they feel different enough. The same with Armageddon, etc. So I would say it's a good double bill. If you can get to the cinema and you're looking for a Sunday kind of possession double bill that you want to see, or wait for them to come out on streaming, then you can't do any worse than Immaculate and the First Omen.
I think for me, I'm more excited about watching the First Omen because I like the Omen franchise, and by that I mean the first three. I pretend there aren't any more films after the first three. Sam Neill did the last one, and then that was it. There was no more. There was no Omen 4. There was no remake. Let's forget about them. They were not
It's
good.
nowhere near as bad as the remake. The remake is awful. It's just a completely misstep of a film because it doesn't get the Omen at all. It doesn't get the feel of the Omen. It felt like when they did those Exorcist movies.
Yeah.
Those two Exorcist movies sort of like side by side. It felt like that. So it's nowhere near as bad as that. It's sort of like up there with the Omen, actually, in terms of quality. So, yeah, I recommend it.
I will check them out. Brilliant. So what else you watched?
I will leave Winnie the Pooh Blood and Honey 2, because I have seen Winnie the Pooh Blood and Honey 2, for Festival of the Dead, which is the Soska Sisters film, which I have watched legally as well, so not illegally, because it's on Tubi.
How do you legally watch it? Because every time I try and access Tubi, it's like, you're not in the right area, go away.
VPN. You need a VPN. So that's what I've got a VPN, which there is a one that I highly recommend. It's called Proton VPN. If you use, not on your phone or a tablet, because if you use that, you've got the new version of it. If you've got an Android box like a Chromecast TV or an NVIDIA Shield like I have, proper legal things that you can go into Currys and buy. If you've got one of those, then use the TV Proton VPN because you can select either America, the Netherlands, or Japan. Then just set it to the US. It's free as well. So unlike with other ones where you only get like 500 megabytes or 2 gigs of data, it's unlimited with it. Set it to the US and Tubi works. So I watched it fully legally. Tubi's a bit of a car crash of a streaming platform, but it's just like everything is everywhere all at once.
Yeah. It's a good name for a movie, that one. That could work.
Yeah, I know. And it was slightly hard to find at first when it actually dropped, because I watched on the day that it actually dropped on Tubi. So it was slightly harder to find because the only way I could find it was actually search for the Spanish title of the film for some reason, which was weird. Yep. I think they might have fixed it by now, but yeah, to search for the Spanish title of Festival of the Dead. So I watched it fully legally on that. The only annoying thing about Tubi is, yes, it is free, but it is ads. And the ads are not just at the start. The ads are interstitial within the film itself. So it's very similar to like if you watched it on ITV over here in the UK, that you get an ad every 20 minutes. So that's the only annoying thing about Tubi. You'll get an ad every 20 minutes. Which is fine.
I mean, you've either got a choice of watching it that way or not watching it. So it's like, I'll take the version with the ads for now.
Or because Tubi does not have a premium version of their app. Okay. Not that I could find. There isn't one where you pay a subscription price and you drop the ads. I think the way they should do it is they should either give you the option. So in the settings, you can actually choose it to watch 5 minutes of ads at the start and then that's it. Or even 10 minutes of ads at the start, or 7 minutes of ads at the start. So watch the chunk of ads at the start, very similar to like if you go to the cinema, or watch it where you'll be hit with like a minute of ads or a minute and a half of ads every 20 minutes. They should give you that option rather than doing it that way. And then in that case there, it doesn't pull you out of a film because they might throw an ad at you when there's a pivotal point.
Yeah.
And that sort of, again, like TV, it annoys the hell out of us when you watch a film on TV and then it hits you with an ad. You go, oh, for God's sakes, I know it's only a couple of minute ad, but you've taken me at the moment now. So I think that's the way they should do it. Should have like the choice, either 7 minutes of ads at the start, or you can have your little pockets of ads during the film itself.
So what were your thoughts on Jen and Sylvia Suska's Festival of the Dead?
It doesn't feel like a Soska Sisters film. That's the problem with it. It just feels like they were given a script and they were told, can you just direct this for us as a favour? And then that's it. It doesn't have sort of like the grubby little mitts, the playful mitts of the Soska Sisters films. It's okay, but it definitely feels or reeks of those direct-to-DVD films, that it's not to the quality of that the Soska Sisters can actually do. It has terrible acting. The script is very, very clunky. The set pieces are just they just wash over you. There's nothing new in it at all. You can definitely tell it was shot on a major shoestring budget. But again, the Soska Sisters know how to get something out of a budget. Look at Dead Hooker in a Trunk.
Yeah, I was rewatching that last night, actually. I dug out my DVD of Dead Hooker in a Trunk. To date, still my favourite film title.
And no way is that film going to cost more than 100,000 plus, maybe 150,000. No way is it going to cost anything above that. But you look at that and you look at things like American Mary, All See No Evil 2, you look at those kind of films and they can get stuff out of a small budget. But this is just, it felt like Tubi went, oh, we need somebody to direct this film. We've got the rights to sort of like the Dead franchise. We need somebody to direct it. Oh, the Soska Sisters, I wonder if they're doing anything. We'll get the Soska Sisters on board. We'll get this person to write the film, and then that's it. So it's not the quality of the Soska Sisters, unfortunately.
I think they did shoot it quite quick as well, because I remember seeing their updates on the social media, and they were like, hey, guess what we're doing? We can't tell you what it is yet. But hey, we finished it. So it was shot, I mean, not a few days or whatever, but I don't think it was a major production.
You can tell. You can definitely tell. But as a Soska Sisters fan, you'll definitely watch it. I know you will, when you can actually get Tubi to work. Or you might have to wait until Tubi officially relaunches again in the UK, which is sometime this year. Dan dropped a date, but Tubi used to be in the UK. And then it disappeared because they lost rights, etc. But it is coming back. So you might either try Proton VPN if you've got, like I said, an Android box of some kind. If you've got a Fire Stick, it works on that. Proton, it's a proper app on the store. I would recommend if you've got a Chromecast TV or an NVIDIA Shield, something like that. Not a Roku, because a Roku's closed off Android. Not an OTV box, because again, that's closed off Android ecosystem. Download Proton VPN, and then you'll be able to actually log into it, download Tubi, and just watch it through that way.
I'm still waiting for the previous Soska Sisters film to come out, On the Edge, which was like easily a couple of years. It went around festivals and everything, but no sign of that coming out either. So they're, a bit of a backlog when it comes to their films being watched in the UK, unfortunately.
Yeah, but I would probably don't rush out to watch the Festival of the Dead. But again, I know you. Yeah. With you being the Soska Sisters nut fan that you are, then you'll definitely go and watch it.
Jen Soska told me I was wonderful last night, so it's like I'm all right with that. It's a good day when that happens.
I still love them. I still love the Soska Sisters because they are brilliant. They get horror. You can tell that they get horror, and with Festival of the Dead, there is something screaming for it to just like burst out there. I think if they were left to their own devices, I think it would have been a lot better than it is. It's one of those kind of films where they get a director to actually do it, and it just feels like they're doing a film for a studio, and that's it. They're not allowed to actually add their own imprint on it. And so you can't sort of like badmouth them for that. For example, Josh Trank. Josh Trank, you knew that he could direct films when he did Chronicle, and then obviously was brought on board to do Fantastic Four, Fantastic, or whatever you want to call it. And you could tell that it's not his film, it's the studio's film. And so you can tell that with this, that if they're left to their own devices, I think they could have made something a little bit better than, unfortunately, what they churned out with Festival of the Dead.
I remember a few years ago when we did our How Would We Run a Studio, I think we both agreed on hire a filmmaker, let the filmmaker do the thing, don't interfere with them. So I don't get why studios do still keep interfering with filmmakers that they've clearly had meetings with, clearly sat down with and hired. Just let them make the film and keep your fingers crossed and hope for the best.
Yeah, and also I don't get like what they've done with Zack Snyder with these Rebel Moon double bill, and the fact that they've turned around and says you need to release a sanitized version of it so it gets more people to watch it. Then you can release your own director's cut, and you're thinking it's on a streaming platform. No matter what age certificate you slap onto something on a streaming platform, nobody's going to pay attention to it. So if somebody wants to watch the film, whether it be a 12 or an 18, nobody's going to pay attention to that sticker that you've slapped onto it at all. So I don't get that. It would have reached the same audience, or probably a better audience, if Zack Snyder was allowed to release his own version of it. So there's just, again, too much tampering with studios.
I haven't watched Rebel Moon yet because I know there is an unsanitized version coming out, and I'm like, I'll just wait for that one. Why am I going to watch one that I know has been chopped to bits? I'll watch something else in the meantime, and then watch the full uncut one if and when it surfaces.
Part 2's out on Friday.
It is.
This Friday upcoming. So I really hated Rebel Moon. It's such a messy film. It's all over the place.
Do you think that's probably because it's a sanitized version, though? Or do you think that you could probably watch the unsanitized one and go, yeah, that's still a mess, it's all over the place?
That's no excuse. I hate directors who use that as an excuse. They turn around and go, I've got a director's cut version which makes a lot more sense compared to the sanitized version. You think, well, there will be the same film for a lot of it. It's not the fact that the director's cut version of the film that you've got is going to pretty much replace the entirety of the movie. About 75-80% of the film is still going to be in there. You're not doing a completely different film. And so I don't get directors who use that as an excuse. And so it just means that the basis of your film is rubbish or is so weak that you think that 5-10 minutes extra or these few extra scenes is going to make the difference.
What about,
it doesn't?
To use an example, Ridley Scott's Kingdom of Heaven? The theatrical version versus the director's cut, I think maybe about 40 minutes difference off the top of my head. That does make so much of a difference. I enjoyed the theatrical one when I saw it. A lot of people didn't. Watch the extended one, like, oh my God, it's like a whole new film. It isn't like a whole new film. It's just like a longer version of the same film, but it feels better, I think.
Depends. It depends. But I don't believe Zack Snyder. I don't.
Do you not believe him?
No, because he's done it multiple times before, and so I just don't believe him as a director. I think if you believe the director, if they've sort of like established a relationship enough for you to believe what they're saying it does make a difference. For example, the scenes that James Cameron added to Aliens compared to the original version of it, a few of those scenes make a hell of a lot of sense in the uncut version, or the one that he's went back to actually change. There was a few scenes in there which sort of like the reference to in the theatrical cut, and then you get to see them, and it makes a hell of a lot of sense. So I think they lay the groundwork. But when you have a film where it never feels like the groundwork's laid for it, and when you watch it, you just go, well, that's a bit pointless. Just release it in its original form.
Yeah.
So Zack Snyder has... Yeah,
I will watch Rebel Moon at some point. I do quite like Zack Snyder. He's just visually pleasing. It's like, just put him with a good writer and that would be amazing. But he's a bit like Michael Bay, where you're like, you know what to do with a camera. It's just like, it is what it is. But
I don't think even if you gave him a good writer, I think he would just go, well, this person's wrote this, and then he'll get his green mitts on it and just cross pretty much everything out and just rewrite it again and say, oh, I was the one who did this film. So yeah, I don't believe that personally. I just think he's a hack of a director. He
Oh no.
made one. I'll give him two films he's made good, really good. Dawn of the Dead is definitely one of the best remakes I've ever seen. I think that film was fantastic,
Yeah.
and I do like Watchmen. Despite the fact that it's clunky in some areas, I do still actually like Watchmen. And the first 10 minutes of a few of his other films are watchable,
Okay.
but the rest of his films are absolute garbage.
I like Dawn of the Dead. I love Sucker Punch, which I know I'm in the minority of Planet
You
Earth on
are.
that one. I like the theatrical one, not the director's one. I don't like the director's cut that he's done. I prefer the shorter version or whatever it is. Watchmen, good film. Man of Steel, Batman v Superman, the long version. I really do like that, and I love Zack Snyder's Justice League cut.
No,
So you know, 300,
no.
I'm not a huge fan of. Can't quite get into that. Just like I get it, but I'm not. It just bores me.
Sucker Punch is good for the first 10 minutes, and then the rest of the film is an absolute train wreck.
He's going back to that though, isn't he? He's going to go back and do another director's cut of Sucker Punch. You don't need to. Just it's fine. It's too old now. Move on.
Pointless. Absolutely
Yep.
pointless. And then I've seen Godzilla X Kong, or as it's a lot of it is Godzilla X Kong, but if you're a gamer or something like that, it's Godzilla Kong, the new
Yep.
empire. Not versus or whatever, but I have seen that. It's to leave your brain at the sort of like door, crashy bashy, big bright. The human element of the film is very low substandard stuff, but the big monsters beating seven kinds of crap out of each other is what I've come for kind of film.
Yeah,
It is that kind of film.
You don't go to see Godzilla X Kong thinking you're going to get the English patient, do you? Really? You would hope not.
No.
You want to
No,
see
I
these
definitely hope
monsters
not.
punching other monsters. What does the X mean in Godzilla X Kong?
It is just two people teaming up.
Right.
So when you have somebody X something, it's just two of them teaming up, and then somebody V something, it's just them versus against each other. That's all it means. So that's why in video game sort of like terminology, it is Godzilla Kong, the new empire, because it's Godzilla teaming up with Kong. I don't think it would make sense if you say Godzilla teaming up with Kong or something like that. So you have to have the X.
Godzilla and Kong might have worked, but you kept seeing the X. I'm like, what does that mean? Don't know. Not seen the film.
It sounds like we're going back to English patient territory. If you say Godzilla and Kong, it's like them just skipping down past the pyramids before they're actually destroy them kind of situation. But yeah, that's all it means. It's just that they're teaming up with each other rather than being adversaries.
We are getting Monarch season 2 as well. That's been greenlit, hasn't it? So that's good. I liked season 1.
And the last two films I've mentioned, because I am going to mention that film where I did see it that I gave a dreaded 0 to.
Yep.
But Winnie the Pooh, Blood and Honey 2. I have seen Winnie the Pooh, Blood and Honey 2. It is a million times better than the first one. It is one of those very, very rare things where the sequel improves on absolutely everything the original intended. In every way, shape, or form. The acting is a lot better. The special effects and the makeup and the creature design is a hell of a lot better, which you'll have seen that in the trailer. So it's a hell of a lot better. It has a lot more fun with what it wants to do. The gore is there, a lot of practical effects. So I love the fact that the director has done a lot of practical effects. The budget is not as high as a lot of people think it is, because a lot of people thought that the budget for Winnie the Pooh, Blood and Honey was around about 1 million. It's not. It's around about 350,000. So it's not as high as people think it is, but it's head and shoulders above the original. It's not to say it's still a fantastic film. It's not. It has a lot of problems still, but compare to the first one, I can't recommend the sequel more than enough. It's definitely worth a fun kind of silly watch.
Because I'll always defend Winnie the Pooh, the first one, as a slasher movie. As a Winnie the Pooh adaptation, it's on very shaky ground because that's a very weird thing to do. But I've seen, and I'm sure you have, slasher films that are a lot worse than the first Blood and Honey. I know that Rob, who jumps on a podcast now and again, once a year or whatever, he barely made it into the first 15 minutes of the first Winnie the Pooh film. He fell out with it. He's like, I'm done. So he's not technically watched it, but he hates it. He's got a real issue with the fact that the filmmakers are doing a Pooniverse where they're bringing in all the Bambis, and he's like, it's not a Pooniverse. So he just keeps banging the drum of It can't be a Puniverse if Bambi's in it. I'm like, it can be because it's the characters that they're doing. So, Rob, shut up.
Have you seen the trailer for Bambi the Reckoning?
No, I haven't. No.
There's a teaser trailer out there for Bambi the Reckoning, which just looks like a deer going on a murderous rampage. That's all it is. So yeah, there is the trailer for that, and then you've got the Pinocchio one. You've got Peter Pan, which I do quite like the poster for the Peter Pan one. So that's sort of like made me slightly interested in that. You always that's the thing with Peter Pan though. There is always that malevolent sort of like murderous element to the character of Peter Pan. You think there is something seriously wrong with this guy. He could flip on the spin of a switch, and you expect him to pull out a chainsaw and chop somebody's head off.
Well, it creeps through the windows of children, so
Exactly.
You can start with that basis. That's pretty creepy. Certainly looking through with the eyes that we have nowadays, maybe in the 70s, 80s, and whatnot, not so much. Now, very creepy.
But yeah, I sort of like, you can sort of like leave Winnie the Pooh, Blood and Honey to one side, because after the first 10 minutes is an absolutely utter travesty of a film. The first 10 minutes is fantastic. I love that sort of like animation kind of opening. It's brilliantly well done. The sequel has a recap on what happened in that. It actually even uses footage from that, very similar to like Demons 2 or whatever. It uses footage from it. And I love the fact that he did that, because it's him saying, look how much this film has evolved over the course of a year. Like, you look at the mask that Winnie the Pooh was wearing in the first one, and then you look at the prosthetics and the makeup and things like that in the sequel, and you go, that's a year? That you've managed to do that in 1 year? So I'm sort of like interested to see what you can do in the space of a few years then, if that's what you can do in that 1 year. So he's somebody who sparked an interest in me a little bit. So I recommend Winnie the Pooh Blood and Honey 2 when it gets an official release here in the UK.
I remember when the first one aired and I watched it, and it was fine, and I'll defend it. But my hope was that the filmmakers would learn from the first one, and not just, when they made a second one, is not just carbon copy the second one. And it sounds like they haven't just carbon copied it, so they have learned, which is really good.
Definitely learned. It's sort of like the first one is like they've took it to their first thesis in university, like the study film. And they'll go, you know what, we need to create a quick horror film because I'm taking horror or whatever, or that's the area of film that I'm interested in. And the first one feels like that. And the sequel feels like they've learned techniques and styles and how to handle practical effects and makeup and costume designs and how to create a set piece and things like that over the course of the time of their course that they're on in university, and being told, take what you've learned in the first film that you've created at the start of the year and then bring it into what you're creating for your final thesis, etc. And that's how it feels like that. They've come on absolute leaps and bounds, and I'm hoping I haven't bigged them up too much where they just trip over their own feet for the Peter Pan film or the Bambi film or whatever.
Or Winnie the Pooh Blood and Honey 3, which has already been greenlit as well. So
yeah. And then the final film of note, well, there is another film, but I'm not going to go into it because it's part of, the horror iceberg that I'm harkened on multiple times. I saw a film called, you can make your mind up with the kind of film that it is from the title of Flesh Meat Dolls.
Okay.
It's a 15-minute film that if you were to look on the horror iceberg, it would belong on level 7.
Oh, wow, because I think you thought you were on level 6 or whatever last time when you mentioned the horror iceberg. I only know that because I was watching our horror iceberg conversation this week, so my memory's not that great. But so you've moved up a level.
Yeah, because the level 6 is the things like Faces of Death and those real documentary ones. Yeah, this is level 7 kind of stuff. And even, I know you don't mind swearing on this podcast, but even on this podcast, the descriptions, because when I describe this, in my own brilliant way of trying to describe things without them being so bad that you have to censor us completely, I described this to people at work. I even actually sent a link to a friend for him to watch it, and he lasted 8 minutes. And it's only on for 15.
Wow.
So when I described to them at work, they just went, what the hell have you watched? And I went, well, I like to try and challenge myself, and I got through the entirety of the film, and I just, at the end of it, I just went, okay, fine, that's disgusting. Fine, something really seriously wrong with me. But it's out there. You can find it on the internet if you do want to watch it. Legitimately find on the internet as well. You don't have to go on the dark web. It is there on the internet. It's on for 15 minutes. and I can't recommend it to anybody. I just can't. But it's there if you're morbid curiosity.
Well,
Is there.
One of our amazing horror listeners, Chris, who used to do the Bind Torture cast, you could recommend it to him. I expect, Chris, if you've seen it, email me your thoughts and I'll read them out to Stu on the next one. So I'm sure Chris has seen it, and I'm sure he is the one person you could probably recommend it to. So Flesh Meat Dolls.
Yeah, Flesh Meat Dolls.
Flesh Meat Dolls, yeah. Walt Disney presents Flesh Meat Dolls, yeah.
Yeah. And then the last movie of note is, it's sort of like on that opposite scale that I was talking about, where I said that this year I gave a film a 5 for the first time. And so that's where I'm treating this year. And so that means that if the doors were opened for a film to be given a 5, the doors can be opened for a film to be given a 0. And I've always said that a film should never get a 0, because if a film has been created and it is a film, that's its intention, then you have to give it at least a 1, because something has been there. However, I just couldn't even allow myself to give the film Murderitaville a 1.
Okay.
It's one of those kind of films that very few people have reviewed it on Letterboxd and IMDb. When I watched it, it only had 8 user reviews on IMDb and a couple of user reviews on Murderitaville, to the point that one of the user reviews on it actually had comments from the director. The director's even reviewed his own film on Letterboxd.
Did he give it a good review?
He did, obviously.
Well, that's good.
So the film itself there is a singer called Jimmy Buffett, and it is about a group of people who are going to a Jimmy Buffett tribute concert thing. And on the way there, they get accosted and stalked by this parakeet, sort of like cockatiel human hybrid.
I was about to go, I'm sorry, did you say parakeet? But yeah, you did.
Yes.
Yeah.
I did indeed. The reason why I gave it a 0 is because the film itself is got a runtime of 70 minutes. It doesn't last its own runtime. The film itself is literally only 48 minutes. Actually, if you take out the opening salvo as well, it's only about 40 minutes, the film itself, because the last part of it is the credits, and then it is just them doing the makeup of the parakeet human hybrid thing for the last part of it. So that's it. It's not even a functional film. Like, the way I said it is, I read one review where they said that it feels like it is one of those direct to YouTube kind of ideas. I said it's more like a direct to TikTok idea.
Yes. Yeah.
Like, honestly, everything it tries to do, it gets completely wrong. Like everything from the acting to the script to the special effects to the music to just absolutely everything it does, it gets completely wrong. There is a character in the film that it does a sort of like Home Improvement. So, you know, the neighbor in Home Improvement, you only ever saw the sort of like top part of his head and then that's it. There is a character in this who literally walks around with a piece of fence. And the way the director established it is, it's sort of like thinks that it's a barrier between him and the people that are having a conversation, that they can't even get round the fence. Like, it is literally a fence that divides them fully off. And it's only one slat of a fence. It beggars to believe that. Oh, just why? Why?
Is it one of those, it's so bad you should watch it just to see how bad, or just, you know what, skip it, don't save your breath and watch anything else?
Because those kind of films are films like Birdemic, or Trolls 2. They are the so bad kind of films that you have to watch it just out of morbid curiosity, because you just want to see how ridiculous the film does actually get. That's those kind of films. Murderitaville is not even a film. That's the reason why I was able to give it a 0, because after finishing watching it, I couldn't even see myself thinking that this is a film. It's not a short, because it's too long to be a short, because it literally does have an official runtime above an hour. So it's not a short. So what is it then? It's just something that exists on film that Just why? And the only way to watch it as well, and I will hold my hands up high. I watched it because I saw a TikTok video, and somebody, because there's this person on TikTok who's doing this thing that she has to try and watch every single officially released horror film of 2024.
That's a hefty task to be. It's fair, isn't it?
She watched it, and the only way to watch it, so I'll admit I watched it illegally. I don't mind admitting to it on this. The only way to officially watch it is you have to buy it on Amazon. It's £10 for you to buy it, so you have to officially buy it to watch the film itself. If you spend £10 on that, it's the most ridiculous thing you've ever done. You might as well take a £10 note out and set it on fire
and film it, and that's more entertaining. Watching that film back by the sound of it.
It is that rare thing where it's one of those films that is actually cracked into my top 5 of the worst films I have ever seen. Literally ever seen. Like, the worst film I've ever seen. And I can't classify it as a film, but the worst film I ever watched was the film called The Mad, which nobody has seen. It's a Billy Zane film about zombies. And it's absolutely abhorrent, that film. It's sort of like, if I could classify that as a film, it would be number 1 on the list. It's horrendous. It is horrendous.
Worst one I've ever seen is Rocky and Bullwinkle starring Robert De Niro. I hated that film. And then Matthew Broderick's Inspector Gadget. I hated that film as well. I just like, this is awful. I give up.
The Mad is worse than that. And there is a sequel to Megamind. Remember the animated film Megamind? I've seen the sequel to Megamind because it's on Paramount, and it's awful. It is awful. So you'll watch that and think, right, that's even worse than Inspector Gadget or whatever. But if you manage to watch Murder-Eaterville, out of curiosity, you will probably agree with me in the fact that you'll look at it and go, this is not a film.
Yeah.
It's just not. Stop lying to yourself and saying that it is. It's not.
I don't think I'm in any danger of running out of stuff to watch at the minute, so that may stay on my list for a while. I did get around to watching My Life as a Courgette.
Hooray.
Which I think, how many years does that take? It was like 2017 or 2018 or something that came out?
Something like that, yeah. So much so that Celine Seymour has actually wrote and directed a couple of films after My Life as a Courgette. So,
and the only reason I watched it is because I lost a bet, pretty much. I'll be honest and say that. Every time you've mentioned watch it's really good, I'm like, I'm sure it is, but I'm not a huge animation fan. I can appreciate animation, but I'm not like, ooh, an animated film, let me watch that one. So I put it on, and I think it was on Mubi. And I'm like, I want something to watch. I'll watch that because apparently it's just over an hour. So that'll do. I'll get this out the way, right? I'll lose my bet and then I'm done then. And that was my mindset. So I put it on and I'm like, oh God, it's subtitled as well. Oh, within the first couple of minutes, I'm thinking, I don't know if I'm going to last. And then bear with me. I said, I don't know if I'm going to actually complete this bet because I'm not a huge animation fan. It's subtitled. It's late at night. Within maybe 10 minutes, I'm like, this is possibly one of the best films I've seen for quite a few months. It is so charming, that film.
It is.
And it is a damn sight darker than I figured it was going to be.
It is.
So the kid's in the attic, slams the door, you hear a thump. You're like, my dark brains tell me that somebody's just gone down those steps. Oh, somebody did go down those steps. Oh my God, he's off to a child's home. Super dark film.
Mm-hmm.
So it's taken me years, but that was such a charming, emotional. I connected with it, even though it's a subtitled animated film about kids. I really enjoyed it. I thought it was, yeah.
And now delve into the catalogue of Selena Seymour films, whether she's wrote them or direct them. So films like Portrait of a Lady on Fire, if you've not seen that.
Right, yeah, I've heard of that one.
Phenomenal film. She is a phenomenal writer and director. I recommend anything that Selena Seymour has actually got her hands on to anybody because she has such a range. Like, she's able to write a film that is so, like, she was involved in Petite Maman, which I love that film. And so she's able to write films where they have that delicate touch to them, where they have that sort of like childlikeness to them, to the darkish tones, to films that are specifically aimed at adults. She is a phenomenal writer, Selena Seymour.
But I can't think of an animated film that I've seen that features like abusive parents not surviving, kids bullying other kids. beyond the Simpsons sort of bullying. You're like the real nasty sort of bullying. Alcoholic aunts showing up, being horrible to other children. You're like, this is just really adult. It's adult animation, but not adult animation. It's like Felix the Cat or anything. But it was an experience. So I went downstairs and said to Annette, I said, I've watched it. She's like, oh, was it bad? I'm like, it's really good. She's like, really? I'm like, yeah. She went, you didn't want to watch it? I'm like, no, I didn't, but I'm glad I did.
Yeah.
It's yeah. But I love it. I love it when I start watching a film and thinking, nah, I'm probably not gonna last. And then I go, no, I'm not hitting the stop button, even though I want to. And then by the end of it, I'm like, that is one of the coolest things I've done this week. Really, really good choice. So it definitely deserves all the praise that you've been giving it, and that everybody else has been giving it as well. So
good.
Yes. So I've passed that one. Have you seen the trailer for See No Evil?
Yes,
the James
the
McAvoy
remake
one. Yeah.
Because I have watched the original. I know a lot of people think the original is brutal. It's on Shudder. It's a Shudder original, and it's not as brutal as people make it out to be.
No,
it is dark, but not as brutal as people think that it actually is. And I watched the trailer of it, See No Evil, and it reminded me of like a spin-off from Glass. Like he took his character from Glass and just went, I'll do that with it. It looks interesting, but because I've seen the original, I know what to expect, and I know that trailer is full of spoilers.
Yeah, it is.
It's a bad trailer for that.
That trailer pretty much tells you the majority of the journey that you're going to take when you're watching it.
Yeah.
Because I think it was actually the Suskas that were they were talking about the original one like a year or two ago, and they were, oh, we've just watched this and it's brutal and it's harsh. I'm like, well, that's on Shudder, so I watched it. I liked the film up to a certain point, and then there were characters doing things, and I'm like, if I was in the position of those characters, I'm talking about like the victim characters, if I wouldn't do that. I don't get why they're doing that. That makes no sense why they would do that. Just do this, all right? And no, and so I had a real issue with how the characters ended up. I'll be curious to see if this remake with McAvoy changes that ending.
Yeah, I agree with you. I think the ending is easily the weakest part of that film because it, as you said, it does not make sense from a human point of view.
No.
Like it's not the fact that there is somebody literally with a gun against their heads and told you have to do this. It's not that kind of thing, or they've been possessed to do something like that, or what have you. It's not that. It's just a decision that is made, and you think, really?
You would never do that. I would never do that. You would never do that. Do this. No. Oh, we're gonna punch you in the face if you don't do it. Well, go ahead and I'll break your neck. But these characters do it, and you're like, I don't quite get that. So I'll be curious to see. I like James Watkins, who's doing this new one, because Eden Lake is amazing. That's still, my benchmark when people say, what British film should I watch? Eden Lake, watch that one. It's always on the list.
Yeah, he's a really, really good. That's the reason why I do want to actually see it, because of Watkins. Just because I agree with you. If people ask, can you recommend me a brutal film to watch? I don't go, I'll watch a Serbian film or something like that. Watch a really good brutal film, and you look at things like Eden Lake. It's one of the darkest British films ever made, in my opinion. It's really brutal. So I highly recommend that. And I can't wait for it because of him and McAvoy. When McAvoy is allowed to be unhinged, he's really good at unhinged.
I usually go Eden Lake. Seasoning House is usually in there as well. I'm a big fan of Seasoning House.
Yeah,
they're sort of just brutal type movies. And also, what do you think of I don't know if it's a remake or a sequel or whatever, but they're going back to the well of the Blair Witch Project.
They are indeed.
Why? I don't know. Money, obviously, but
Exactly. I just know. The last film was the Adam Wingate film. Is okay. It's fine. You showed way too much than you should have. It's no Book of Shadows. Book of Shadows is it's none of that. And it would have been more interesting if they sort of like did what Daniel Myrick and Eduardo Sanchez wanted to do for a sequel, because they had a different
way back, wasn't it? I think was that
yeah.
or was that a different one that they wanted to do? They wanted to go way back to like the 1600s or something.
Yeah, that was their original idea. They wanted to sort of like show how the witch became the witch, or the myth became the myth. And so I would have been slightly more interested to see that rather than what Blumhouse and Lionsgate are actually doing with whatever they're going to do with the Blair Witch Project. So I'll see it, but I don't have any high hopes for it.
I just think I can't see it being a success because those that love the original one, me, if they do this new one as a conventional film, like they did with the Book of Shadows, so they remove the whole found footage, shaky cam, lost in the woods, stand in a corner type thing, then people like me are going to go, that's not the Blair Witch that I recognize, so I'm not a fan. If they do go back and do it that way, which I don't think they will, then everybody else will go crazy and go, what the hell, it's just like the first. They need to try and do something really clever. I just don't think there's a mythology or a franchise in the Blair Witch story.
Because it was told in the first one.
Yeah, it was.
That was the whole point in the first one. It just felt like one film. Like it told everything it needed to tell. You got sort of like the backstory of the witch from the talking heads moments of the documentary part, when they're actually just exploring that, and then you got the myth behind the witch within inside the forest and what actually happened to three people when they tried to dig much more deeper in regards to that myth itself and the ultimate outcome. The outcome itself does not have a full stop at the end, it has a question mark, which enables you to think what actually did happen at the end of it, what actually caused them to do exactly what they did in the last 10 minutes of the film. I'm skirting around the ending, even though the ending's out there, but still there's people out there that might not have seen it. And you think, so what can you do next? And everything that you will do with that, they try to actually do something different with the Book of Shadows by making a film about people who were obsessed with it. And it was an interesting idea. So maybe you could look at the Book of Shadows template idea and do that, and sort of like do a film which is people sort of like exploring the found footage film itself. You could do that, but that's been done before. You can't redo what's been done in the original Blair Witch, and you can't do a direct sequel to it because there's nothing to sequelize from it. No. You've got very little avenues to go down, with the only one to go down is sort of like a seminal remake to Book of Shadows. And do you want to have that sort of like floating above you while you're doing a film? Not really.
No. So I love Blumhouse. I like earlier Blumhouse. I think at the minute they just seem to be rubber stamping sequels and remakes and stuff. So I would rather they get back to some original stuff. They are doing another Five Nights at Freddy's, aren't they? Which I've not seen the first one yet, but we're getting another one of those.
But this is the problem with Blumhouse. Their original stuff as of late have been really low quality. So Imaginary was not very good at all. Night Swims was not very good at all. And Five Nights at Freddy's was not very good at all. So the stuff that they've tried, new things, well, Five Nights at Freddy's based on an IP that's already out there, where there's been 5+ games made already for it. And Night Swim's a killer swimming pool. Well, it's not actually a killer swimming pool, but there is something in regards to the swimming pool. And then Imaginary, an idea about an imaginary friend, which there is another film coming out like that called If.
There is,
but a children's version of it, but an imaginary friend, which is an interesting idea, never explored to its fullest at all, not even a small little moniker of it. So Blumhouse at the moment have lost ideas. They've just lost ideas. They've delayed the next Saw film that's out next year instead of this year. That's out in September of 2025. They've pushed back. The Crow is being pushed back slightly again.
Yeah, only like a month or so. But what I see with the Crow thing and the internet is just mad about the Crow. How dare they remake the Crow? It's like, give me a break. I've seen people go, "Oh, just delay it indefinitely." Why? If you don't want to watch it, don't watch it. I don't understand the logic where people get mad about a film coming out and they're like, "No, never bring it out. Just skip it. It's fine." Some people want to watch it. I'll watch it. It's fine.
You have the original. The original will always exist. The only time the original will never exist if they completely destroy it and get rid of all traces of the film itself. So if they just look at take it off every streaming platform, destroy every sort of like physical copy of it. People will still have it.
Yep, I got it.
Just destroy it. So that's the only way that the original will not exist. Like if it's lost, like The Day the Clown Died, the Jerry Lewis film that he directed. That film is lost to time, so nobody will ever get to see that film itself. So that's the only way you can't see it. So they could sort of like potentially remake it if they wanted to, and then they would have the thing that, oh, you can't go back and watch the original. But you've got the original to watch anyway, so if you're not interested, you don't have to.
I got a nice Blu-ray of it in the other room, and nobody's coming for that. I will. Yeah, it'll be like I've got like John Wick. Somebody tries to steal my Blu-ray of The Crow.
But it's just like with the way people are acting with the 28 days later and 28 weeks later kind of thing. That people are going, oh, because you can no longer get physical copies of it. It's selling for hundreds of pounds on eBay. No, it's not.
No, it's not. No, it's not.
No, you can still go into CEX or places like that and get a Blu-ray copy of for a couple of quid.
Yeah,
it's not.
See, I got confused with this 28 years later thing. Because I saw that some news articles are saying that the director of Candyman, DaCosta, she's going to be directing, and it said the second in the trilogy, and I'm like, second? What the hell? And then I discovered that they're not just doing another film, they're doing another. Well, they're not doing another trilogy because it's not a trilogy yet, but they're doing 3 more films. So that's
which from what I've heard is they're all going to be set 28 years later. But they're all going to be set in different areas of what has actually happened, because obviously with the first 2, it's predominantly set in England. And then with a slight little hint of Paris at the end of the second one. This trilogy is sort of like the way they've done it with Bird Box and then Bird Box Barcelona. Like the Bird Box Barcelona is set was what's happening alongside of the stuff that's happening in America. This is happening in Spain. Sort of very similar to what they're doing with the 28 years later thing. They're going to do the Danny Boyle one is going to be set in England, the UK area, and then the Nida Costa one is going to be set somewhere else, and then they're going to get a third one to do it sort of like set somewhere else, but sort of like have ties and interleave between them, very similar to what Netflix did with the Fear Street trilogy.
Yeah,
it's going on very similar kind of things to that, rather than setting in different time frames, set in the same time frame but in different areas. That's what I've heard.
Do we know if Alex Garland is coming back to do the writing?
He's writing all 3. Good. Garland, because he's obviously got Civil War that's out in cinemas now.
I really want to watch
which is new. So do I. That's supposedly his last film as a director.
Yeah,
which has annoyed me because I do like his films, even though Men is a bit off.
What he said was, I have no plans in the immediate future to direct again. That doesn't necessarily mean he's never going to direct. It just means he don't got any plans. And we see Hollywood, filmmakers and everybody saying that sort of stuff all the time. I have no plans to do another podcast this week. Doesn't mean I'm not going to. It just means I haven't got any plans. So I'm hoping that with Alex Garland saying that he will direct again. I've liked his stuff.
You can tell by his tone with the interview that he did with Simon Mayo for the Kermode Mears take, that you can tell in his tone that he is just completely pushing directing to one side and wants to go back to concentrating on writing. So he is writing all 3. He is definitely going to be involved in all 3 of the 28 years later films. But I like Nida Costa, even though the Marvels sucked. It's a terrible film.
I didn't mind it, but
But I really liked Candyman.
Yeah, Candyman was good.
As a sort of like reimagining of Candyman, it is definitely very strong, and so there's some fantastic ideas in that Candyman. So I do like Nida Costa. I think she's got some really interesting ideas, and I love the fact that they've gone and done this. Like rather than just getting Danny Boyle to direct the 3 of them. Get a different direct different ones, because then it'll have a different feel to them. So I do like that idea, and I'm a huge fan of the first 2. So
I prefer the second one. I love them both, but I prefer the second one to the first one. I do. I just find the whole. I always remember about 28 weeks later, it just seems to start, and then it's relentless for the whole. Robert Carlyle's fleet, that shot when they're all running down the hill and he's leaving his I'm like, oh my God, what the hell am I watching there? I found it very intense when I watched it. I do like the first one, but I do have a fondness for number 2.
I sort of put them in the same light as Alien and Aliens.
Yeah.
Like they have different feels to them. Like the first one is this character study of somebody who's trying to just survive in the apocalypse. And the sequel is the apocalypse has run its course. It's still running its course. And the world is destroyed in a lot of areas across the globe. And so it's sort of like the exploration in regards to that, and it's sort of like the action version of it, slow and steady pace one. So it depends on your mindset and what you feel like when you go into watching it. If you go, oh, I want to watch a film that's methodical, that's the first one. If you want to watch somebody, as you said, is relentless because of that score. When that score kicks in with Robert Carlyle just abandoning his family and charging towards the river, that is some of the best music I've ever heard in a film, ever. And the same person who did the score did The Wolf of Sunshine, and Sunshine is by far my favorite soundtrack because I love that soundtrack. I love that film anyway. So that sort of like score sort of like explains it, because you didn't have that kind of score in the first one. You needed that punching kind of thing in the second one. So it's dependent on your feeling on how you go at it. If you want action, second one. If you want sort of like more character study, first one.
But I'm very excited about getting more 28 movies. It's been one of those. We've always wanted a follow up to District 9. You know, just like I've always wanted a follow up to 28 Weeks Later, and it's been years. I'm like, finally, it seems to be moving towards being a thing. So I'm very happy about that.
Same.
So I have a question for you. What I'm going to do is start making little tiny videos on YouTube. So I snip bits of podcasts out. And so at the end of all the episodes, I'll end up going, I've got a question. And it'll be a little mini topic, and boom, we're up and running. Which is the best John Carpenter film? This has been something that's been bugging me for like a week. So we'll start with it. Which is your favorite one? Which is the best Carpenter movie?
Well, when it comes to Carpenter, I only always have 2 films in my mind, and it's the 2,
I've got
the obvious
3.
2.
I've got 3. I can't choose between them all. I'm really
It's always Halloween, and it's always The Thing. I think Carpenter sort of like nailed his sort of like tense filmmaking with The Thing, because with Halloween, it was sort of like his way of getting his foot in the door, sort of establishing himself, saying, this is what I can do. Give me the chance, and this is what I can do. I can make tension. I can make sort of like you believe that you are sort of like with the characters. Like I love it when a director is able to make you feel like you are actually in the film. And Halloween sort of like did that. It was the kind of first film of that ilk that you went trick-or-treating with the characters. You were in Haddonfield. You were sort of like in the area itself. You might not have been part of what is going on, but you were in the area itself. You sort of like felt like you were expecting to hear a news story or a news flash. Like you've gone and got your sweets. You've decided to leave everything alone. And then you've got home, you start eating the sweets, you're trying to watch a horror film yourself on TV, and then all of a sudden a news flash comes through and you hear sirens and all that kind of stuff. That's how it felt to me, Halloween. But with The Thing, he sort of like took that and made it more tense because it was in a restricted area. Like you never felt like you were in the film, but you felt like you were eavesdropping on it. You were watching something that you should never be watching. Like you can't believe what is actually happening. And I think for me, he sort of like was able to do that because he obviously did Halloween. He sort of like cemented his craft with The Thing. And I think personally, anyway, for me, his best film is The Thing, very closely followed by Halloween. So it's The Thing for me.
I can't narrow it down because every time I think Halloween, I'm like, yeah, but then you've got The Thing. You go, well, The Thing is really good. But every time I think about The Thing, I always go back to Escape from New York, which is my third one. And I can't choose between any of those. Every time I go to one, I think to the other 2. And it's one of those things. If somebody said, right, you've got to pick one or we'll shoot the other, I don't know. I can't choose. So it's been annoying me all week. Which one do I prefer? So for me, it's definitely one of those three, but they're all different enough, I think, that I kind of like them. I think obviously The Thing is probably one of the best films about paranoia that I've seen since like probably the Body Snatchers, some of them Body Snatcher movies. Escape from New York is just a great sci-fi movie, and Halloween is easily my favorite slasher movie. But I'm stuck. I can't choose between those three. Instantly,
it was easy. It was easy for me because when we did our 100 favorite films of all time, The Thing was in my top 10. Halloween wasn't.
Right.
So that's how I was easily able to actually split them because, I've seen The Thing more than I've seen Halloween. I've seen Halloween quite a few times. I've seen The Thing quite a few times as well. And I still, to this day, get a little something different from The Thing. And just because he was brave enough to end it on that question and all that kind of stuff. So I just think The Thing is the slightly better of his oeuvre. I would be interested if anybody goes for films like Ghost of Mars or what have you.
Do you know, I liked Ghost of Mars, but it's not even in mine. I like vampires. Do you know what my least favorite John Carpenter? There's two that I'm not a huge fan of. There is Dark Star, which is just too weird for my liking, but I'm glad he did it because then we got to see all these other John Carpenter films. And I'm not a massive fan of Big Trouble in Little China. It's just too quirky and just bonkers for me. So, and I know a lot of people really like that film.
I do. I actually quite like Big Trouble.
It's just a bit, I don't know, it's just too, like he's having too much fun, which is fine. I'm all right with John Carpenter having fun. They should do. But compared to his other works, I would rather have Prince of Darkness. I'd rather have They Live. I would probably think The Fog is not as good as Big Trouble in Little China. So maybe Big Trouble isn't my least favorite one. That would be The Fog. But
yeah, well, at least it's not as bad as the remake of The Fog.
Never watched it. No, don't. No, life's too short.
You really don't want to. Yeah, the original, The Fog from the '60s is fantastic. It's very tense and paranoid-inducing and stuff like that. Carpenter's one is sort of like a watered-down version of it. So yeah, but for me, I really don't like Ghost of Mars. Ghost of Mars is just like, it's like somebody screaming at you. It's an annoying kind of film, and I hate feeling like that annoying kind of feeling. So no, that for me is his worst. His best is The Thing. His worst is Ghost of Mars.
I still can't choose the best one yet. I will at some point, but it's very difficult. Which is your favorite David Cronenberg film? And are you a David Cronenberg fan?
Not a huge fan of his.
Really?
Not a huge fan of Cronenberg. Again, slightly easy one. It's The Fly.
One of the best remakes. Anytime, remakes are all terrible. Dawn of the Dead by Zack Snyder, not a terrible remake. Night of the Living Dead, Tom Savini, pretty good remake. And The Fly, David Cronenberg, very good remake. But is that easily The Fly? You like, it's that one?
Yeah, The Fly. And The Crazies, the remake of The Crazies is with Timothy Olyphant is much better than the 80s version of The Crazies.
I think Cronenberg, I'm sort of split. I can go for Cronenberg original, which would be Scanners, which I love Scanners. I think it's great. I'm a huge Michael Ironside fan. But for Cronenberg as a director, it might be The Dead Zone, the Stephen King's The Dead Zone, because I love that movie. But Crimes of the Future, weird film.
Hate that film. That film is just
very strange. I quite liked it, but it's like
I didn't like it at all.
It was just weird. I like Cronenberg. It's like I'll watch anything, but yeah, he's not. Yeah, I wouldn't watch back-to-back Cronenberg films all the way through.
No. Imagine if you had a deal of where you watched like a Cronenberg film and then a David Lynch film, and
Lynch is a weird one.
You decide to dig into Friedkin's sort of like very weird film catalogue outside of The Exorcist, and you decide to just go for the obscure. You go for Gaspar Noé film, and then a Lars von Trier film. So you have a deer of absolute insanity. Your brain will be completely dead by the end of it.
That sounds like your weekly viewing, though, to be fair, with all these mix of films. That's what you watch on a week-to-week basis, other than throwing in like My Life as a Zucchini now and again.
Well, I'm not a huge Gaspar Noé fan. I sort of like appreciate him as a director. He is there to push boundaries. That's his whole thing. He literally will push a boundary from everything from irreversible to climax. All those films are controversial because that's the way he directs. I'm not a fan of Lars von Trier at all.
No.
Melancholia. Oh, I hated that film, Melancholia. So I'm not a fan of his films at all because they're so plodding and so stuck up their own backside. Like, he's a director who, after the end of every single time you see his cut at the end of each scene, you can tell that he's constantly patting himself on his back. So I'm not a von Trier fan at all.
No,
but just imagine if you went to the cinema and they locked you in and it was a deer of that, where you've got like 6 different directors and the strangest film from each one of those directors, and you were forced to watch it. I would never go back to that cinema again.
It could be like Clockwork Orange, where they just force your eyes open and just make you watch these things to try and give you some sort of sensitivity back from when you watched Elm Street at 2 years old, that sort of thing. They go, we will bring Stu back to the human race. We will give him some emotions.
It would be painful if I had to do that.
I was listening to a podcast last night called Dead Air, and the host on that, Wes and Lydia, just watched Nightmare in a Damaged Brain, which is called Nightmare Elsewhere. Have you seen that one? From it's very early 80s. It was one of the notorious video nasties. I remember the cover art, and I got a screener disc from Severin, sent me a screener disc through, and I sat and watched it, and that is a weird film. It's pretty brutal. I mean, it looks like an 80s video nasty film, but it's a harsh movie. It's good.
I remember the box art. I probably have seen it. It's not a Yuzna film, but it has a feel of a Yuzna film, doesn't it?
Yeah, it's just like kids just running around with an axe, and there's lots of beheadings with axes, and just craziness going on. But
it always sounds like a Yuzna film, because Brian Yuzna was obsessed with doing those weirdly over the top films like Society.
Society's a weird one.
I like that film actually as a buddy horror film. I think it's completely off the charts, that movie, because you really don't know what to expect in the last 25 minutes, and my God, it really leaves an imprint in your brain, that film. But Yuzna Films did that. Reanimator did that, etc. So that was the kind of director he was. It was a strange, weird director, Brian Yuzna. So
I get quite giddy when I listen to a horror podcast episode and they're talking about a film that I've watched recently, because that very rarely happens, because I don't watch tons of horror films, but I've seen a lot of them. So I'm like, oh, I've watched this one, and I sit down and listen to them. I could join in the conversation because we'd all watched it recently, but interesting film.
Yeah, it's sort of like that one I was telling you about, that woman who's she's watching every single horror film released this year. I'm sort of like, when she's reviewing them or talking about them, I'm there with a pen and piece of paper going, ooh, write that one down, got to watch that one this year. Ooh, write that one down, got to watch that one this year. Because she has such an...
Are you filling up your October slots? Is that what this is for?
Potentially, but she has such an enthusiasm when it comes to it. It's nice to actually see, and she's completely honest if she hates a film. Like, that's how I saw that Murderitatville, because I saw she watched it, and if she absolutely hates a film, she would definitely say she absolutely hates it. So she doesn't sugarcoat it. So I'm sort of like going, oh, got to write that one down, got to see that one. Oh, she absolutely hates that one. I have to watch that one now then as well.
Yep. But so what you got planned? Obviously you're out tonight, but I am. You've got a couple of hours before you head off.
Food, and then watch some football, and then head off tonight. And then I'm not much of a drinker anyway, so I won't be suffering a hangover tomorrow. So tomorrow is just going to be like a lazy... Sundays is my definite film day. I always watch a film on a Sunday morning, always, but it is my sort of like lazy kind of day. I don't know what I'm going to watch yet, but there's a couple of things I'll seek out.
I started introduced Annette last Sunday to Porky's, 80s classic. She'd never seen that before, so I love that movie. So again, we do that on a Sunday. We just sit down and watch something that we've never seen before or not seen for a whole bunch of years, but not sure what yet.
Yeah.
So now that my evening is free, I will probably watch some sort of movie tonight. So
brilliant.
That'll be fun and games. But yeah, you have a good night tonight at the party thing.
I will do.
and I'll try and come up with some more topics next time we chat.
Brilliant.
All right.
Now we'll catch you later then.
You take care, Stu.
Bye bye.